Hello and welcome to this Takeda episode of the Eternal Law. On the last Takeda episode we saw the assault on the Honda's final castle happening at last, led by General Nobukado, leading his forces in a rear attack on the castle whilst distracting the castle's defenders with a fake attack on the west side of the castle. Getting inside easily, the distracted enemy forces could do nothing to stop us taking the Tenshu and claiming victory with a very low number of casualties. Meanwhile, Shingen's army was rampaging around against the Amiko forces, capturing first Setsu and then moving on to capture Harimer, two castles taken in quick succession with the Takeda forces. Then our ally, the Date, decided to declare war on our other ally, the Ikko Ikki, leading to the breaking of the Ikko alliance, and then when the Ikko attacked our new ally, the Kita Patake, we joined war against the Ikko, starting a conflict which immediately gave negative results. We lost North Shinano straight away when the Ikko Ikki struck. However, then we began to make our comeback. We had Nobushige attack a province very near the enemy's home province, and in a pitched battle he used cavalry to distract the Ikko forces from his main line, and then the main line completely mopped up the Ikko forces by just having a superior position. And now let's continue on. The primary focus of the clan should be the reunification of central Japan. The rebellion is wide and far spread, but so are we. It is likely that only we have the power and position to stop them. We must avoid conflict with the other samurai clans until the peasant rulers are crushed and order restored. Only then will it be proper to unify the rest of the land under a single clan. I have sent orders to our armies already. We shall pacify Shinano and attack the Ikko's home forts. All Ikko temples are to be burned to the ground. So we've just defeated the Ikko Ikki here in Kaga province. Nobushige's army taking only light losses to destroy an entire Ikko force. He levels up as a result, very good news, and of course we capture the castle. So now I have a foothold very near the Ikko headquarters, which is going to be very useful in the war to come. The Ikko Ikki are doing a little bit of shenanigans back over in Setsu, trying to destroy some of our ports. Now moving into the next turn, we are being threatened with attack from the Shoni to the far west, a massive empire to be worried about. We also have this special event called Jizamurai. I think it's something about there being a large number of wealthy landowners in our territory, and we can put them to work in certain domains, and I chose them to let them focus on agriculture because it increases the general wealth of our clan. We also get a message saying that some of our units have suffered winter attrition, and this is because the AI rather foolishly made my ships sail too far away from the coast when I gave them a course back towards the Takeda lands up from the Hatakeyama lands. So we've lost some men and damaged the ships in the process. Annoying, but not a loss we can't recover from, of course. Now Shingen is continuing his rampage against the Ikko forces by moving up into the newly captured area of Setsu and taking out this small Ikko force which was just marauding around as we saw. The Ikko force happened to retreat into a perfect position where I wanted Shingen to station his army, so I was forced actually to chase after them and destroy them so I could occupy the same position they were in. An easy victory for Shingen, quickly auto-resolved, pretty much no losses there. And now these forests here are providing a useful ambush position on the road there to the capital, but it's mainly going to be useful for ambushing the Ikko forces you can see in the northeast here. Coming down from Tamba there, I've got two huge Ikko Ikki armies, so I've got two armies of my own to defend against them, assuming they're going to go down towards Setsu province, which appears to be what they're doing at the moment. So here's the situation back over in Oahri. Ikko forces are holding the castle, and we have tons of men in the area who really are just waiting to get inside the castle. I moved my Metsuke around to see if there were any Ikko reinforcements hiding in the area, but it didn't look like there were. That means I am free to move up. General Yamadera leading the attack, and a huge reinforcement group going to be coming up behind him just to support him on the castle siege. And in fact I'm going to have such a big advantage here that I'm going to safely auto-resolve this fight. The enemy force there is made up of mostly Naginata samurai, which are not so strong against the mostly katana samurai army we're going to be taking against them, which means even if I'd fought this on the field we would have had an even bigger advantage. But anyway, the auto-resolve goes very well. We actually lose like no troops at all. We capture Oahri, however we've divided the realm.
The tallest tree, for that is where the axe strikes first.
So we're going to have to deal with this realm divide. Will our allies stay with us? Well, we'll just have to see. The real question is, will the big western powers come and try and attack us, or perhaps attack the Ikko Ikki and just generally get involved in the central theatre, because that could cause problems. It would definitely tip the balance against us. Now for my first move in the new realm divided world, I'm moving Nobukado's army, who is freshly returned from capturing the Honma territories. I'm moving him down towards North Shinano. We're gonna try and retake North Shinano from the Ikko Ikki. I've been gathering forces on several of the borders of the province, so we should be ready to take it soon. We have more forces still coming down on the ships, but they won't arrive until next turn, so they probably won't get involved in the North Shinano campaign. Here you can see Nobushige's army, which has now restored the losses it took in the battle capturing Kaga, which means it's now ready to move on really, and perhaps put some pressure on the Ikko Ikki's headquarters, which is just down the road to the west. Now since Nobushige has no reinforcements, it'd be dangerous for me to just jump into that assault, so first I sent my monk ahead to go and scout the area, and it turns out that the next Ikko army is actually quite far away. It's down in Wakasa, which means I have pretty much free reign to move on Echizen as I see fit. So I decided to take Nobushige's army, which I had moved into an ambushing position on the border, and just strike into the Ikko territory, going right up to the castle. The castle only has its garrison to defend itself with, which is quite a lot smaller than my attacking army. My attacking army isn't particularly powerful, as you can see. It's mostly Ashigaru, but they are experienced Ashigaru and they're led by an experienced commander, which means the balance bar is actually very much in my favour. So as you can see, I'm auto-resolving. It's a decisive victory. Loss is a little bit heavier than the previous auto-resolve, but still acceptable. So now the Ikko Ikki headquarters is in our hands. I'm going to repair the castle and destroy those Ikko temples as I start to converting it back to the samurai way. On every road, the shrines to the rebel gods are cast in smoke as my men set torch to all the Ikki loved, as per my brother's orders. The local people are, for now, peaceful. I suspect their former loyalty to their former masters is damped by the feelings of disappointment that no army came to stop our advance. But I think they will soon regain their passion, and we shall find insurrection to be a more dangerous foe than the conspiring of the Shogun or the wrath of these false deities. So the turn is over, and as we move into the next turn, we're going to watch and see what the Ikko Ikki do. They have plenty of opportunities to strike at us, but will they take them? This is the question. They have moved forces up towards Echizen, suggesting that they are going to try and retake it. Depends what those men there are going to do in the future. They have a large army group which they seem to be moving down towards the Kitabatake forces, and then a massive army suddenly appears at the borders of Setsu. So it looks like Shingen is in trouble there, as are the Kitabatake. As we said, the Kitabatake are in full retreat there. The castle is now exposed to attack and their main force in the field appears to have been defeated. So perhaps my young ally who got me into this war is going to be destroyed very soon. Now the Shoni appear to get involved in this fight. They send a small army down into Harimer and lay siege to it. The army didn't look very large, so I didn't think they were going to bother with a siege assault. However, as the turn goes on, it turned out that they were going to bother. Now they have only a very slight advantage in terms of force strength. We have an equal number of battalions and about equal numbers in terms of men. So things are okay. We have the defender's advantage, however the enemy has heavier forces, so this fight could go either way. So on the battlefield we have our large castle to defend and not many men to do it. However, the enemy doesn't have so many men to assault with either. The enemy decided to focus their assault on the southwest side of the castle, which meant I could focus my defense there too, which was quite useful for me. I didn't have to break up my forces too much. So the enemy begin their advance. They're going to be leading with their heavy troops. They have Katana Samurai and Nodaichi Samurai. They're going to be cutting through my front ranks once they arrive, and here they are. My archers are all positioned on the inner sanctum section of the castle. I put no archers on the outer wall, because the wall is so shallow, I figured it would be captured immediately by the enemy. Plus I had a plan as to what I would rather do. You can see I'm distracting the enemy archers with a loose formed up section of Yari Ashigaru there. Simply a sacrifice unit to absorb arrows away from the units behind them, some of my stronger Dojo Samurai units. So here's my plan. I'm simply letting the enemy take the first wall and move somewhat into the castle, whereby I will then block them. This is going to force them to bunch their forces up. out in the open on these little grassy sections, and my archers in the inner sanctum will then fire down into the blocky sections of enemies and start whittling them down. Now this is the only real way I can win here, because the enemy just about has an infantry advantage. In the sheer fight they would be able to cut through my men one by one, especially the no Daichi samurai who would just completely obliterate my Yari Ashigaru. You can see my men are putting up a pretty good fight to begin with, and the arrows are already streaming down into the enemy ranks. Here where we trap the enemy up against the wall, I can't really use my arrows tactic, which was quite annoying. And it turned out to be very bad news, because that unit was destroyed immediately. As I said, the no Daichi samurai destroyed my Yari Ashigaru in less than 30 seconds of fighting. So now they've broken through. I deployed my reserve unit, which is where my general was. The reserve unit is holding this unit of long Yari Ashigaru away from the gates, so my archers can keep firing down at them. However, they are taking bow fire from outside the castle, and because they are in a tight formation, they're taking quite heavy losses. You can see bunches of enemy forces here are beginning to surround my Yari Ashigaru, and they're pretty much in a horrible condition because they're fighting with sword units against which they are weak, and they're being attacked from all sides. I am managing to cut down some of the enemy with my bows though, so although I'm taking extreme losses and not really killing any of them with my infantry on the ground, my archers are making up the difference at the moment, so we're just about holding even on the balance bar.
Our men are running from the battlefield! Shameful display!
And now this section of my defense crumbles. The enemy starts moving through. However, luckily they're moving into where my reserve is positioned, so they can't get into the inner sanctum of the castle right away. My archers inside start bombarding those outside with flaming arrows, trying to demoralize them a little bit, but it's not going to do very much. They're already seeing that they're beginning to win, at least locally. So my forces outside the castle have been worn down by simple attrition. Very few of them are left. Many of the enemy units are dead as well. Of course, we've defeated a couple of enemy regiments, but there's still enough enemy regiments on the field to worry us, because at this point all we have left are archers, but for this small pocket of melee fighters who are holding on against the enemy attacks here. The katana samurai you would expect to hold on, but here we have some Ashigaru who are doing surprisingly well holding on. The only problem is now they're going to be attacked by all the other men who have defeated the rest of my troops and are now free to come and mop up the survivors here. Though most of the enemy troops actually decided not to go on mop-up operations and simply attack the inner sanctum right away, which probably was the superior choice, because that means they're going to be bombarded by fewer arrows, which was what was really destroying them. You can see here those no Daichi samurai I keep mentioning are doing their thing again. Just look at the number of Takeda bodies on the floor, and I don't see a single enemy body. They're just ripping through our troops. We can barely resist them. These bow Ashigaru are the weakest troops in the game in melee, and no Daichi are some of the strongest, so very bad news.
Our entire unit has perished, my lord.
Now all I could do was have units sacrifice themselves to slow down the enemy advance, so I could maximize the number of enemies I killed before they took the Tenshu. Therefore I just positioned my bowman regiments in ranks between the enemy and the Tenshu, having each rank of the bowman regiments slow down the enemy by fighting with them, whilst the other one shot into the blobs of enemies that would build up with arrows to get more and more kills. The balance bar is still somewhat in our favour. I mean, we're not being completely obliterated according to the game. However, you can see on the screen, realistically, we are. All we have are Ashigaru bow units fighting against massed enemy melee infantry. However, these bow Ashigaru units performed admirably. They actually destroyed a large number of the enemy forces, even when just acting as a meat shield for the men behind. Now the enemy are advancing towards my final regiment. I gave them a volley of arrows just before their charge arrived, but that volley didn't appear to do anything, as we saw there. So now the last Takeda troops are fighting just in front of the Tenshu. The enemy can't get close enough to capture the Tenshu at this point. We saw our last Takeda officer there was just cut down by one of the enemy's local sword Ashigaru. Bad news for the men remaining, but as I said, they are going to hold on quite well. But you can see here the enemy have now deployed their samurai against them, so they're in trouble. More katana samurai actually came up behind those Yari samurai, and they chased my men towards this tower. I tried to put them in front of the tower so the tower would get some kills, since these guys probably weren't going to kill any more enemies, but this allowed the enemy to attack the Tenshu. Of course, so we're now in the final minute of fighting. These last survivors are fighting on against the katana samurai. I believe they did kill perhaps one or two of them, but realistically this was just a slaughter of a dozen or so Takeda men. Now this man here is performing very admirably. He's holding out against all of these enemy troops. They don't seem to be able to hit him. This must be the one master swordsman among my bow Ashigaru. He is holding off this group of a dozen or so katana samurai with ease, and he actually survives. So one Takeda troop survived the battle, sitting in the corner fighting for his life, and it was a costly enemy victory. So the enemy have taken the castle, unfortunately. We did take out a large number of the enemy forces in the process, but that matters not. The enemy is going to raise a garrison and we can't immediately retake the castle, so bad news for the Takeda. I had thought that tonight the castle grounds would be alight with lanterns as the enemy held their victory feast, but instead a few muddy men go without food, for the job of clearing the bodies has not yet been completed. 2,000 men stood proudly on this battlefield this morning, now barely 100 remain. History has rarely seen such horrid rates of death in battle until this age. The endless makeshift graves beyond the wall are a testament to the bloody determination of our warriors that some call honour. So now we can see the battle results screen. It was a valiant defeat for the Takeda forces. All of our men are dead. We almost destroyed all of the enemy too. We defeated more than 90% of their force, but still that's not enough. We've lost the castle. Now we receive a random bonus going into the next turn. They were going to have extra line of sight on our provinces, which is good news. We can see a little bit more of what the enemy are going to be doing. What are they doing? Well, it looks like the Ikko Ikki are continuing their assault towards the Kitapataki lands there. I have the option to get involved because I do have forces in the area, so I'm going to have to make that decision as we go on. Now far in the northeast, I'm bringing finally in the reinforcements down from the Hatakeyama lands that took so long to get back, doing the fairly cumbersome task of moving them between various groups of ships and then onto the dock side, and then I have to make the decision about where I'm going to send these men and which battlefront they're going to get involved in. At first I was thinking the North Shinano area, but then I actually started to think I have quite a lot of men here, and they would be more suited to moving down towards Nobushige's position around the Ikko capital, simply because it's very likely the Ikko will come and try and take it back, and they have several large armies down in Wakasa that we know about, so we do need to have extra forces there, so it's simply preparation for that. So here's Harimer, lost to the enemy unfortunately, and we can't take it back because of this situation here. An enormous Ikko Ikki army coming down from the north, and you can see that as well as being massive, it's very well trained. It has tons of really elite troops, even more elite than our troops in it. So Shingen's army is in a bit of trouble, but we're going to ignore that for now because I wanted to focus on what we're going to do in North Shinano. So at least here there's some chances of victory. You can see there are two Ikki armies, one guarding the castle and one guarding the roads down into Kai, where I have a large reinforcement group waiting to move up. So what I really need to do is clear the enemy army guarding the road so that my reinforcement group can join up with Nobukado's forces and then attack the castle. So first I started moving my men up into battle range with the Ikko force, and then Nobukado's men are going to bypass the castle sneakily, moving around its area of influence to attack the enemy army on the road. This means I have a massive advantage against it. The enemy army there wasn't very experienced, but it has some very elite troops in terms of their equipment. They all seem to be heavily armoured, and the Naginata samurai, so those guys would have been the most armoured troops you can really face on a Japanese battlefield. But we're not going to face them, we're going to auto-resolve like the cowards we are, and it was a decisive victory, so it was a good move. So this means the army has been cleared off the road. We didn't really lose any men either, which means now we're in an absolutely ideal position to attack the castle at North Shinano. The only question is, do we have enough movement points after all that action? Nobukado doesn't quite have enough movement points, but he can get near enough the castle to support any siege assault that goes on. The reinforcement group, however, can begin the siege assault, which means I'm going to move up all the forces I can get in, so I'm going to move these extra fire cavalry in to support the attack. You can see there, we saw it just now, that the balance of forces is somewhat equal even with my huge numerical advantage. So I wanted to really seal the deal by moving down these extra men from Hida who didn't appear to be required there anymore. I think they were just there to put down some eco-rebellious thoughts that were going on in the past. So now these men are in position to help the siege assault on the castle. Now we have all these forces here. Surely the balance of power will be in our favour, and looking at it, it's more in our favour than it has been before, so it's pretty safe to auto-resolve this conflict, I decided. The reason I'm auto-resolving is that it takes a very long time if you don't. If you fight all these siege assaults one by one, this series will be going very slowly, so you have seen a lot of auto-resolves in this battle, unfortunately, as a result, because we do need to get somewhere. The number of battles per episode is only going to increase as the war intensifies. Now the good news is we've captured North Shinano with ease, We can now repair the castle and restore it to its glorious Takeda days. So the next theatre to consider is the one around Oahri. We have 2 armies and 2 options really. One of them is to attack Mino. You can see Mino has a moderately large standing army sitting there and a small garrison. I decided I would do this, even though it leaves Oahri undefended, because I decided I could probably take this castle and defend Oahri at the same time since they're so close to each other. So you can see I've moved all my forces up in the area led by Yamadera again. They win a decisive victory at Mino with relative ease, although the group not led by Yamadera actually took a fair amount of casualties on the assault because they were leading it and they had no general. You can see there's an Ikko Ikki temple in the area, so I decided to burn it down. Got to prevent the spread of their rebellious message. So now Yamadera can move his army, fresh from supporting the siege assault, back down into Oahri, which means if the Ikki decide not to attack the Kitapataki and attack Oahri instead, we are going to have someone there to try and stop them. So now I wanted to show you what the political map of Japan looks like. You can see the Takeda have a sort of strange empire. It has a ring shape going around South Shinano there, and then a little block off to the left hand side, which is where Shingen's army is marauding around. So you can see it's a very disunified empire. The Ikko Empire isn't very unified either because we've kind of broken each other up, but the empires on the west and east sides of Japan are unified, so they're in a good position to strike into the center if they wished, which means we do have to be worried about what they're going to do, particularly those western empires, because the Dato are, at least in theory, our allies, but who knows how long they'll be our allies for.
Consider this our offer, and do so with all your undoubted wisdom.
So speaking of the Date, in the end turn sequence, they demanded in fact, military access to our lands for 10 turns. Why they want this is unclear, perhaps because they want to move through our lands to get at some other area. They're planning to attack the capital perhaps, or some of the western empires that they can't be bothered to invade by sea. We don't really know. It's highly suspicious, so I decided to offer at least somewhat of a counter deal.
Your words are wise. We accept your proposal gladly.
They accepted my counter deal, which means the Date have now joined the war against all of the western powers who are allied against me. So this is good news. We now have a new ally in our fight, and perhaps they really will go through and attack those guys to the west after all then. Now the Ikko Ikki take their turn, and their huge elite army starts moving down towards Setsu. It's the most powerful of the 4 Ikko armies in this area, and unfortunately it's facing one of the weakest Takeda armies we have. This little reinforcement group led by a new general doesn't really have the power to defeat this enemy in battle. We have fewer troops and our troops are less experienced. However, if we do not assault them, the enemy are simply going to capture Setsu and we'll be in big trouble. So I have to do something and try this ambush. Let's head in and see if we can defeat this massive and elite Ikko army. No, if we wait for our lord to arrive, they will have passed us already. And what then? The castle shall fall, our ambush shall be spoiled, and then the Ikko horde will be upon us in land from which we can no longer rely on supplies. You say to attack means death. Well, I say not to attack means death for all Takeda subjects in the fief. Perhaps you can see the purpose of Battlefield's honour here. We shall head out to the attack at once, and allow each man to bury a letter to their family if they wish. I shall write to Shingen with news of our decision. The ambush commences. The Takeda are coming at the enemy from 2 sides. The enemy have a huge cavalry force here, and you can see they immediately responded by sending all of it towards my infantry battalions here. This infantry is pretty much all katana samurai, not particularly strong against the enemy cavalry. However, the enemy charge appears to have not very much momentum because it does almost no damage as it comes in. Breaks up my formation well, but very, very few of my men actually died, which means we're going to do well because those katana samurai are going to gradually cut through those cavalry when they're trapped up in melee like that. So whilst a lot of my units are trapped by these cavalry fighting here, I have a few free units that can go and actually attack the enemy's main contingent. It is unfortunate though that I only have 1 spear unit to fight up all of those cavalrymen, so we are going to take more losses than are necessary. Here our samurai and warrior monks are engaging with the enemy warrior monks, and over here we have a few more warrior monks who are getting clogged down by some of the enemy's cavalry units here. I have to deploy my monks against the enemy cavalry because they are the only powerful anti-cavalry units I have in the area. We saw that I got some Onabushi cavalry of my own who are weak against cavalry as well, and they're trying to get out of the way of the enemy cavalry. Now there's a sort of unstructured infantry melee going here. The only bit where it is structured is here, where I have some long Yari Ashigaru who have taken up a formation to fight with the weakest enemy unit, those Naginata Ashigaru. So that's actually a bit of the battlefield that might go well. Now back down where our general is, you can see we have gradually cut down a large number of enemy units. But if you're paying very close attention, you can see that a very small number of our own units are left. I had 5 or 6 regiments of Katana Samurai to begin with. We're now down to perhaps 2. So we're losing men very rapidly, but then so are the enemy. So it's simply a brutal bloodbath going on here in the center. The enemy general was fighting there as well, and he actually died, which is very good news because that general was the son of the Ikki leader, and he was one of their greatest leaders. So one thing we can take away from this battle is that we've killed him. Nothing can stop that from being the case now. Here you can see I have some warrior Nodaichi samurai, a very powerful unit, but they're clogged down because they're being attacked from all sides by the enemy, so they're not being used to their fullest, mostly because I'm distracted by what's going on elsewhere on the battlefield. Here you can see the enemy's warrior monks who are fighting with our warrior monks are really gaining the advantage simply because they're very experienced. They're something like 4 levels above the level of my troops, which means they have a significantly higher pool of stats to draw from, and they simply get more kills per second than my guys do. So we're going to be gradually cut down. Here you can see one of my units of warrior monks has been obliterated entirely. So now the battle goes on. It's going more and more badly for us, but one positive aspect is that my Onabushi cavalry, the survivors of which anyway, finally managed to get into action. They recharged the enemy archers. Those bow samurai are going to go down very fast against those Onabushi cavalry, and they're also attacked by Katana samurai at the same time, so that's good news. You can see my general there was hit by a huge volley of flaming arrows. Luckily he didn't die, a lot of his guards did though, so it's not going too well for our general. Here is the last large concentration of Takeda troops, including some long Yari Ashigaru who are doing very well at breaking up the enemy's little samurai formations, allowing my Katana samurai to get in amongst them and take them out. Over here my long Yari Ashigaru are also the only surviving unit on this battlefront. However, they're not doing as well because they're being attacked from all sides and have lost their formation, so their death is now inevitable, unfortunately. So now I only have a tiny amount of men left. I'm engaging with some enemy samurai, but my Ashigaru simply can't compete with these enemy samurai, especially because a lot of these enemy samurai are in better condition because some of them were not fighting the whole time like my men were. My general moves up behind them to try and inspire my men, but they rout. Now all I have left is my general, after the rest of my troops decide to try and escape from this slaughter. My general's getting shot by some archers, and he apparently isn't too happy about this. And when he gets assaulted by these Naginata Ashigaru as well, he tries to retreat, but he is killed by one of the enemy's Ashigaru. Terrible news, the general is dead, his guards run from the field. It is a costly enemy victory. We lost our entire army pretty much, but the enemy took fairly heavy losses too, and their losses were of elite troops, or ours were of relatively raw troops. So in some sense that is good news, but you can see the battlefield here is completely littered with bodies, a devastating ambush for both sides, but to see the consequences of this you'll have to wait until the next Takeda episode. That's all for this episode, but to see the fate of the Oda clan all hinged on one massive battle, join me next time on the Eternal Law.